Chapter 3, Foundry. The work produced for the iron and brass foundry with the locomotive of the work and similar for the depth of the general engineering foundry, except for the general engineering foundries, perhaps the locomotive cylinders, some of the more complicated, those of the most stationary engine for the modeling, casting metal for the separate of the trade in itself, which is only the briefest mention if it can be made. But the iron steel casing, the number of the locomotive, the parts of the cast iron that's known, that's somewhat less formally the case for the steel casing, the may now be used many of the bracket for the horizontal block, the horn blocks, other details of the account with the greater strength of the reliability of the material. Steel castings, in fact, with replacing the forgings as well. The art of the manufacture steel casting, and especially one of the reason for the few locomotive works that have their only steel foundries. Most of them find it easier and more economical to purchase steel casting for the firms who have made the specialty of the subject for the years. Steel castings are used with the wheel centuries in motion. Plates, frame staves, horn blocks, driving axle boxes, dome seating of the bogie centers, and various brackets and smaller parts. Iron castings are used with the cylinder of the drag box, under the foot plate, with the chimney, with the blast pipe, with the regulator head, with the dome, with the loss of certain horn blocks, smaller axle boxes, and bracket of the brake cylinder, of brain blocks, brake blocks, fire blocks, fire bars, sandbox, with the other some of the rear weight for wheels covering the splashers for good engines. Are also cast in iron. The list include the casting of the varying types of the quality of the cast iron. For instance, the cylinders are made with the very best close-grained iron, but the special quality of the mixture of the greatest care is in take of the produce of the strong-hardened material free from any honeycombing or other defects. But at the same time, the hardness must be not as successful that they cannot be suitably machined and fitted. At the other end of the list are fire bars, which are usually made of the common scrap, much of which has been rejected unsuitable for the other foundry purposes. The most, however, must not, however, be understood that the scrap iron castings are inferior with the material of the best casting of the such cylinders contain a percentage of the scrap iron varying from 50 to 20, 50 to 50, 15 to 50 percent. But the scrap is best selected with the material derived the older cylinders, best machine parts of the big irons used that are selected with the view of the quality casting desired for the cylinder, usually mixed in two different good grades of pig iron with the percentage of the scrap. Locomotive works where the large variation of the qualities different castings have been made with the greatest skill for the part of the foundry foreman is required for the selecting of the grading of this material. Alright, molding for the general casting. The various grades group of the casting require the different methods of the molding. Many of the smaller pieces with the widths for the large quantity of the required are molded with the machine and plate, molded with the inlaid with the case with the material with the metal of the cast and fixed onto the plate. And the shape of the article with the made allows of it the whole pattern is placed on this one side of the plate with the many of the case with the half of the pattern is one side of the other half of on the opposite side of the mold. The wood is then made in two portions. The second part of the being in plate, through the turning of the plate over the one of the main object of the plate, molding of the part with the speed output with the save with the wooden patterns of the being damaged with the constant knocking and shaking. They required to remove them from the sand. A large number of the articles are made with the metal patterns, plating, molding, which are allowed the same side without variation. Vacuum brake cylinders, which are the very thin castings, are made within this way. Also, many forms of the smaller axle blocks, brake blocks, etc. Large drag box casting is made for the green sand, the molding of the floor of the foundry. Alright, figure 8 shows the axle boxes, molding machines, and molds. The bottom half of the may be molded with the sand with the floor with the top of the half of the open box with the plate over the top of the floor molded with the peg within the plate with that so the two half of the molded together will produce the one casting. They usually have the two large open boxes are employed, each containing half of the mold and two that are fastened together with pins and collars. Nearly all medium-sized castings required for the locomotive are molded in this manner. Cylinders are most important. The difficult casting made with the foundry. The difficult lies in the number of the complicated passages which have the molded with the means of the sand core. The passages have been made with the casting of the portion of the mold with the representative of the passage must of course be filled with a piece with a special sand with the made with the shape of the dimension of the passages. So when the iron is poured with the molded with the metal fluid around the core, which remains in place until the casting has been cooled. Afterwards, when the sand core is removed, the desired passage remains in the casting. The cores are made with the wooden core boxes, two halves of which are made with the cavities and when put together form the hollow pattern with the form of the molding of the core is desired. The cavity is filled with a special binding and held together with the laces, nails, and the core is formed with the drilled and sewed with the place and position with the cylinder molded to form the support for the core and molded with the ends of the core with the extent of the form of the core prints with the rest of the corresponding recesses in the mold with the seam of the exhaust pores steam and the exhaust posts are formed of the cores of the type of the hollow cylinder bore with the cylinder in form with another large core. All these cores are made with loam composed of clay and a sharp, clean sand mixture together with the core cow hair with its help to prevent them bind the core, but more particularly makes the pores so that the gases formed for the pouring can escape. Figure 9 shows the view of a large iron foundry with the Great Western Railway locomotive that works in Sweden. The molds of the floor in the foreground with the left-hand side is shown with a single outside cylinder of the various stages of the work, with the two of these finished cylinders are being lifted by cranes in the middle of the floor. Half of the pattern of the pair of the inside of the cylinder in front of which of the iron core barrel on which of the loom with the core of the bore of one of the cylinders plastered finely strickled, and the core of the barrel with the wet, the loom of the rotated with the except of the loom of the swept off the means of the straight layout of the wood of the core of the proper diameter after the having been dried with the drying of the chamber of the barrel core displayed with the proper position of the mold that hold in position that they are core prints formed in the mold. The patterns are in the middle of the floor show the two of these prints over the front face of all the molds must be rammed and vented. Our figure 9 shows the iron foundry. You have an iron foundry, it shows the iron foundry. Carefully to permit the escape of the gases found by the casing of the metal with the inside of the cylinder were formerly cast separately with the afterwards planned and bolted together to form the pair with the modern practice with the cast both the inside of the cylinder in one piece that requires more than expensive pattern to save lots of money. Your brass foundry. All the brass of the gun metal with the casing are made with the brass foundry. These are much for the smaller piece of the iron casting consists of the axle boxes, brasses, injectors, cocks, taps, and sliding valves, hose to the miscellaneous details required for the locomotive. Much of the work is plate molding the various mixture of the metal with the gun metal bronze. For the slide valves, the axle box with the brasses, the common brass with the tabs of the metal is melted not in a large cupola as the iron form foundry, but also in a plumbago crucibles which are heated with the furnace generally placed below the floor level. Chapter 4, Forging Springs and etc.